It was the first week of October in 2002 when everything in Bellingham, Washington began to shift into something unrecognizable. The town, often overlooked on maps and quietly nestled between the Puget Sound and the dense forests that blurred into the Canadian border, had always been known for its silence. Not the calm kind of silence, but the kind that lingered just a bit too long, where even the wind felt like it was listening. People lived quietly, worked blue-collar jobs, and took pride in knowing their neighbors. But none of that mattered when the calls started coming in, one by one. At first, they were nothing more than eerie reports. Someone said they saw a man walking into the woods near the old Dyer property carrying a sack. Another woman swore she heard screaming at midnight behind her chicken coop. But when the Williams boy, Nathaniel, aged 9, went missing on his walk home from school, everything changed. Search parties were formed, posters were printed, and the police made their usual rounds, assuring the town that things were under control. But they weren't, not even close. The Williams boy was just the beginning. Within 2 weeks, 2 more children were reported missing, one from inside his own bedroom with the window pried open, and another last seen playing near an abandoned lumberyard. No bodies, no blood, just the absence of laughter in neighborhoods that once echoed with it. The media caught on fast, branding it the Bellingham Vanishings. Local law enforcement was overwhelmed. They issued curfews, begged for information, and even called in state investigators. But behind all the red tape and panicked headlines, something older and darker was waking up. Something the town had tried to forget. An old story, long dismissed as myth, about the Dyer family and the cursed land they once lived on. It was said that in the late 1800s, when the lumber industry first moved into the region, a man named Silas Dyer built a house deep in the woods and filled it with secrets. He was a man of God by day and something else entirely by night. There were rumors, murders, disappearances, strange symbols carved into trees. And then, suddenly, he and his family vanished without a trace. Some claimed the forest took them. Others said Silas had become something inhuman. The town grew over that legend. Roads were paved, schools were built. But no one ever set foot near the Dyer land again. That is, until 2002, when a strange new resident named Mr. Holloway purchased the remains of the old property. He was quiet, polite, always dressed in a black coat no matter the weather. Most people assumed he was retired or eccentric. He paid in cash, rarely spoke to anyone, and had a strange obsession with digging. Every day, he would leave his house at sunrise and dig into the earth behind the property. Some thought he was preparing for a septic tank. Others thought he was insane. But what no one knew, not the sheriff, not the real estate agent, not the curious teenagers who dared each other to sneak past his fence, was that Holloway wasn't digging holes. He was uncovering something buried long ago, something not meant to be found. Then came the night of October 31st, Halloween. Children in costumes roamed the streets, laughter and flashlight beams dancing through the dark. But something felt off that year. The sky was too still, the air too dry, and as the hours passed, more than a dozen kids never came home. Panic erupted. Emergency calls flooded the police station. Parents screamed through the streets, but the authorities had no answers. That night, one patrol officer, Deputy Marla Reyes, received a strange call from the forest line near the Dyer property. A woman's voice, distorted and crackling through the radio, whispered, "They're coming out now. You need to seal it." Reyes assumed it was a prank, maybe a kid with a ham radio, but something in the voice chilled her. It wasn't just the words, it was the fear behind them, the dread. She drove out alone, against protocol, headlights cutting through fog as thick as breath. She parked at the edge of the forest, near the Holloway house. But it wasn't there anymore, not the way she remembered it. The front porch was gone. The chimney twisted sideways. The windows were like eyes, watching. Reyes stepped out of her cruiser and approached slowly. That's when she heard the sound, like hundreds of whispering voices echoing just beneath the soil. Her flashlight flickered. Her breath came in clouds. And in the center of the yard, she saw it, a massive hole. Not like the shallow ditches Holloway used to dig. This was deep, cavernous, and lined with strange symbols made of bones and feathers. She radioed for backup, but the line went dead. No static, no feedback, just silence. And then the ground moved. She backed away as something emerged, slowly at first, then suddenly. A shape. Not quite human, not quite beast. Eyes that glowed red in the dark. Limbs too long. It didn't run, it didn't growl, it just stood, watching her, studying her. She never spoke again after that night. Deputy Marla Reyes was found at dawn, kneeling in the forest, her uniform torn, her lips moving but no sound escaping. Her flashlight was beside her, still flickering, the battery long drained. She had claw marks on her forearms, deep and jagged, as if she had tried to fight something or someone. But no signs of another person were found. Her eyes were fixed on the tree line, wide and unblinking. She had bitten off part of her own tongue. They rushed her to St. Luke's Hospital in Bellingham, where doctors sedated her, ran tests, and failed to explain the brain scans showing sudden, intense trauma. But she never spoke again. Not a word, not even a whisper. When they asked her what happened, she only drew spirals on her bedsheets with her fingers, spirals over and over, until her fingernails began to split. The official report was buried, quietly. No public statement, no press conference. The town couldn't handle another panic. The sheriff's department stopped patrolling the northern edge of town after that. Maps were redrawn. The Holloway property was rezoned as off-limits. And yet the disappearances continued. Slower, more calculated. One teen in December, found weeks later with eyes missing and jaw dislocated. Another in February, seen walking his dog before the leash was found torn in two. Then came the church fire in April, which investigators couldn't explain. There had been no gas leak, no faulty wiring, but all 47 parishioners inside were lost, burned beyond recognition. The church bell melted into a spiral. Something was happening to Bellingham. People felt it in their bones. Dogs wouldn't bark. Lights flickered even on sunny days. And at night, if you stood too close to the woods, you would hear them, the whispers beneath the earth. Sometimes children's voices, sometimes voices that sounded like your own. Sheriff Tom Hayward had been in charge for 23 years. He didn't believe in fairy tales or forest ghosts. But after Reyes, after the fire, after the river near Mill Creek turned black for 2 days, he started keeping a pistol under his pillow and salt above every door. He even began sleeping in the station some nights, alone, watching the cameras, studying the maps, trying to find a pattern, but there was none, not in the usual sense. The victims had no common thread, no age range, no gender, no known enemies, except each one had once spoken of hearing things, dreams they couldn't explain, a song with no melody, a face at the edge of their vision. The town's only newspaper, the Bellingham Echo, ran a single editorial about it before the editor, Lucas Dre, disappeared on his way home from work. He had written a piece connecting the modern events to the Dyer myth. Titled Digging Up the Dead, it laid out the theory that Silas Dyer hadn't disappeared in the 1800s, but had performed some ritual that rooted his soul into the land itself. That he had been trying to open something, a gate, a mouth, a new kind of God. The story went viral online briefly, but when Dre vanished, the article was scrubbed. The archive folder in the office was found melted. No one else touched the subject again. The paper eventually shut down. And then came Emma Caldwell. Emma had never been afraid of stories. She was a junior journalism student at Western Washington University, with a podcast that covered fringe mysteries. She didn't grow up in Bellingham, so she hadn't been shaped by the town's silent fear. She moved into an apartment 3 miles from the forest, with a cracked window and a view of the mountain line. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't want to be broken. She started interviewing people, reluctant neighbors, retired police, old high school teachers. Most refused to talk, some cried, but one man agreed, Peter Lowry, former gas station clerk. He claimed to have seen Holloway the night the Williams boy disappeared. He swore that the man had blood on his palms and black dirt beneath his nails, that he was humming, but it wasn't music. It was more like a prayer, or a warning. Emma recorded everything, posted her first episode, got thousands of views. She started digging through old blueprints, property deeds, police reports. Her wall looked like something from a crime thriller. Strings connecting names, photos, missing persons. She noticed something strange, a pattern in the names. The missing people's initials formed a sequence, Latin letters. She used a cipher from an old Bible. The translation, "Open the throat." That phrase repeated in Holloway's journal, which she stole during a break-in. The journal was filled with pages soaked in some dark brown fluid. The writing was uneven, clawed into the paper. The gate sleeps, but the soil dreams. The children feed the root. The blood calls the shape. The spiral must turn. She didn't sleep after that. On October 29, 2003, exactly 1 year since the first disappearance, Emma decided to visit the Holloway property. Not to film, not to report, to understand. She entered through a trail behind the high school, flashlight in hand. The wind felt strange, like it was breathing. She passed trees with carved symbols, bones tied with string, teeth embedded into bark. And then she saw it. The pit, deeper now. A staircase of stone leading downward into absolute black. She should have turned back, but she didn't. She descended, one step, then another. Each stair felt colder than the last. She reached the bottom, a chamber carved from stone and root. In the center, an altar, and beside it, Holloway. Or something that looked like him. He turned slowly. His eyes were gone. Only spirals remained. His mouth opened, and from it came the voice of every person Emma had interviewed. Their words, their cries, their memories, overlapping, drowning her. The walls began to pulse. The roots glistened with something warm. She ran, screaming, but the exit wasn't there anymore. They found her phone 3 weeks later at the edge of town. No Emma, only the recording. A final message, "We're all in the throat now, and it's still Humbry." 3 months passed after Emma Caldwell's disappearance, and Bellingham began to rot from the inside out. Not in a physical sense, at least not at first, but spiritually, psychologically. The people changed. Neighbors who once waved from porches now pulled their curtains shut. Kids stopped playing outside. Pets disappeared from yards. The grocery store closed 2 hours early every day after 2 clerks reportedly heard growling in the storage room. When no animals were found, lights dimmed inexplicably across entire streets. Churches emptied. Sermons became quiet affairs about endurance, darkness, and the test of light. And still, no one said the name Holloway aloud. It was as if speaking it gave it power, like it could hear. But outside of Bellingham, word was spreading. A Seattle-based investigative show called Pale North picked up on Emma's podcast and decided to do a feature. The host, Blake Dunn, was a skeptic by trade, a man who believed everything had a logical explanation. Cameras, drones, audio equipment, they came in loaded. Blake didn't believe in curses, he believed in mass hysteria. But the moment his crew stepped into Bellingham, their equipment started failing. Batteries drained within minutes. Audio distorted, even when recording silence. One crew member, Michelle, woke up screaming the second night with spiral-shaped bruises wrapped around her arms like vines. On the third night, they lost someone. Their sound guy, Roger, walked outside to get signal and never came back. They found his shoes by the tree line. That was all. The show never aired. Blake checked into a facility 2 weeks later, muttering about mirrored faces and the mouth that breathes beneath the floorboards. The state tried to intervene, quietly. A task force of federal and environmental officials was sent under the cover of an ecological review. But only 5 of the 12 returned. They had no memory of the other 7. One agent, a woman named Calhoun, couldn't stop shaking. She was the only one who spoke. She described an underground system of tunnels with walls made of breathing wood and a heartbeat that echoed like thunder. When asked what happened to the rest of the team, she said they stepped into the spiral and never stepped out. It was at that point that Father Elijah Morrow, a defrocked priest turned occult researcher, took an interest. He had followed cases like these for years, towns on the edge of maps with vanishing people and unnatural symbols. He claimed Bellingham was only the latest in a series of locations across the Pacific Northwest that followed the same pattern. Ancient forested land, colonial settlement, unexplained mass disappearances, and rumors of subterranean structures. Morrow believed these places were nodes, points of contact with something older than time. Not demonic, not alien, just ancient and awake. He arrived alone, with journals, a crucifix made of obsidian, and a relic he claimed was taken from a dig site in Romania. something he called a mirror key. He didn't stay in a hotel. He pitched a tent near the Holloway property line. For 5 days, no one saw him. On the 6th, hikers found his tent torn to ribbons, his books burned in a neat pile, and his crucifix embedded in a tree trunk 15 feet off the ground. The only trace of Morrow himself was a recording device buried beneath a rock, still intact. On it was his last message. It's not just one throat, it's a choir of them, and we are the hymn. Back in town, the last survivors began forming a pattern. 3 families fled. They never made it past the southern highway. Their cars were found abandoned, with tires melted and radios still playing low whispers. One man, Walter Greaves, managed to send a letter to his sister in Idaho. It was postmarked 2 days before he vanished. The letter read, "The trees are closer now. They lean in when you sleep. Don't listen if they whisper your name. Don't dream. That's how it knows." Then came the winter blackout, December 2003. A freak snowstorm swept through the region, cutting off all power to Bellingham for 6 full days. No communications, no heat, no news. What happened during that week remains unclear. But when emergency services finally regained access, nearly 30 homes were empty. No bodies, no blood, just the smell of smoke and earth. Houses were filled with spirals drawn in ash on the walls. In some, recordings played on repeat. One phrase over and over: "Feed the root remembers." The last act of sanity came from Police Chief Tom Hayward. On January 3, 2004, he called a press conference and live-streamed it through a Barnode connection. In it, he didn't read from a statement. He didn't beg for help. He simply stared into the camera and said, "We dug something up. We fed it without knowing, and now it knows us. There's no undoing it. There's no wall high enough, no prayer strong enough. If you hear the spiral, it's already inside. Do not come here. Seal the roads. Let the forest take what it wants. We are already gone." He then lit his uniform on fire and walked into the woods. He was never found. Years passed. By 2007, Bellingham had become a ghost town in everything but name. The census still listed a population, but the people who remained weren't the same. Their eyes were vacant, their routines mechanical. No laughter, no music, just silence, as if the town had become an echo of itself, replaying the memories of what it used to be. Newcomers who stumbled in, lost travelers, misdirected truckers, curious thrill-seekers, rarely lasted more than a night. Some drove off screaming. Others simply vanished between mile markers. The highway signs for Bellingham began to rust faster than the others. GPS systems would freeze when navigating near the town. Local maps started leaving it off entirely. It was as if the town had been erased in slow motion. But beneath that silence, the spiral turned. In early 2008, a freelance videographer named Lucas Fry, no relation to the missing Edgar, snuck in with a GoPro, a drone, and a sense of invincibility. He had grown up 2 towns over, and the stories of Bellingham were the stuff of sleepovers and dares. But he wanted to go deeper, to prove it was all just superstition and urban legend. He live-streamed his arrival. For the first 2 hours, nothing happened. His drone flew over empty neighborhoods, streets lined with rotting leaves, stop signs twisted into symbols. He mocked the quiet, laughed at the stillness. But when the sun went down, the stream changed. The colors shifted. The frame slowed. Viewers commented frantically that they could see something behind him, something pale and tall and wrong. Lucas's voice began to echo even when he spoke softly. His camera picked up whispers, not from his mic, but from within the static itself. Then came the singing. Soft, childlike, out of tune. The stream ended abruptly with a sharp gasp and a final image. A single eye, wide and bloodshot, staring directly into the lens. The last comment before the feed cut was just one sentence. "He's in the throat now." The footage went viral for a moment, then vanished. Not just from the site, but from downloads, screen captures, backups. It was as if something reached through the wires and pulled it back in. Internet forums called it the Fry event, and then stopped talking about it. No one wanted to draw attention. No one wanted to listen too closely, because by then, the spiral had spread. It started in towns near the forest edge. Ferndale, Lingdon, Cedra woolly. Little signs, lost pets, blackouts, dreams. People waking up with soil under their nails and spiral-shaped cuts across their backs. A school in Deming closed after students began drawing maps of places that didn't exist, places they claimed they visited during sleep. A librarian in Mount Vernon disappeared after cataloging books that no one remembered checking out. Books with titles like Feeding the Root and A Mouth Beneath Cities. Her desk was found covered in teeth. The state quarantined the area. Quietly, official statements said ecological concerns. They closed the back roads, but it didn't stop. Whatever was under Bellingham was no longer content to stay there. It had tasted the surface, and it wanted more. Some called it a sentient force. Others said it was a parasite or a god. But the few who studied the ancient dire texts found one recurring phrase written in blood and bone: what grows beneath must one day bloom above. In 2012, Emma Caldwell's voice was heard again, not in a tape, not on a podcast, but live, on a pirate radio frequency that lasted for just 13 minutes, broadcasting across 3 states. It was unmistakably her. Her voice cracked and distant, but hers. She spoke only once. The spiral doesn't end. It only coils deeper. There's more than one, more than here. It's waking up everywhere. You'll feel it soon. In the quiet, in your breath, in the soil. You won't run. You'll kneel. We all do. No one could trace the signal. No one found its origin. But after that day, everything changed. Reports of spiral patterns in cornfields, sinkholes shaped like eyes, rivers flowing backward, dreams shared between people who had never met, a baby born in Vancouver with words carved into his back in a dead language, and always the same phrase whispered by those who heard too much. The throat is open. At last, recorded visitor to Bellingham was a woman named Andrea Keller, an urban folklorist and documentarian. Her final entry in her field journal, dated October 31st, 2015, read, "I stood at the edge today. The trees moved without wind. The sky blinked, and from beneath the earth I heard a choir humming. Not a song, but a memory. The ground remembers, the forest remembers, and soon we all will." She never left. Her journal was found in a Seattle thrift store, inexplicably clean, with no return address. No one knows who donated it. Now, when people speak of Bellingham, they do so in hushed tones, not because they're afraid of mockery, but because they're afraid of being heard. No one says Holloway's name anymore, not even online. Threads about the town are always closed by moderators. Videos disappear. Recordings melt into static. Some say the spiral is digital now too, that it learned to move through screens, through sound, that it's listening to you as you listen to others. So if you're watching this now, this video, this story, this voice, I only have one piece of advice. Do not replay this. Do not share this. And if you dream tonight, don't follow the spiral, because once you see it, it sees you too.